In the past, I have been far too hesitant to support theories about shows that I was very sure were true. There was always something in the back of my head that was like, you might not want to commit to that fully, Joshua. What if something shows up in the show that proves your theory completely false? I do think general skepticism is good as a whole, both when viewing art and just living, but it can go too far, so I am going to take a stand against that kind of overwhelming skepticism by saying that I am 100% sure of what I'm saying now. I am willing to take a stand right here now that Belos is in fact a human. I'm not going to hesitate. I am sure he is the human mentioned by Gwendolyn when she's talking to Luce at the end of episode 204, that being Keeping Up A-Fear-Ances. Now, I will admit that I am far from the first person to start saying this. People have been saying Belos is a human since around the middle of Season 1 or so, certainly by the end of Season 1. But I am now ready to join them, wholeheartedly. And if you're not quite convinced, I have to ask you, if the human Gwendolyn mentioned isn't Belos, who is it? I have not yet seen anyone provide an adequate answer to that question. Now, it could possibly be some ancestor of Luce and Camilla, considering how concerned Belos seems to be with keeping Camilla in the dark, but I find that very far-fetched at this juncture. Who do we know in the Boiling Isles that is certainly hiding dark secrets? Who do we know in the Boiling Isles that suddenly appeared and conquered the world 50 years ago? Who quickly united the Boiling Isles under his cruel reign? If the kid mentioned by Ida is not Belos, I would be very surprised. Especially since they went out of their way to point out that it was a him. None of this, I believe, is coincidental. We know Belos is hiding secrets. He is the most mysterious character in the show. They even have him wear a mask. And per Chekhov's gun, you do not have a character wear a mask unless they are hiding something. Unless there's something that they do not want the outside world to see. Now, it is possible that what I've been talking about could just be a red herring. It is possible that it is nothing more than a coincidence that you have Gwendolyn talking about a kid who mysteriously disappears a long, long time ago, and then you have Belos appearing mysteriously 50 years ago, his face completely covered. But I highly doubt that it is just a red herring. It would not be a particularly effective red herring. A good red herring should be obvious enough that everyone spots it. This is not that obvious, but it is sensible if you think about it for a while. And this is a major reason why I am confident that the idea of Belos being a human is something that is going to be confirmed by the text. Now, of course, this does not mean Belos is no longer a mysterious character. There are a lot of mysteries about him that are not just simply about whether he is a human. For instance, his long life expectancy. The fact that he has been ruling the Isles for over 50 years really calls into question if he has just an ordinary human life expectancy. But that issue is really blown up once we consider the information Gwendolyn gives us. If the story of the kid arriving in the Boiling Isles was from Gwendolyn's grandmother's time, that makes it significantly older than 50 years ago, I believe. So one has to wonder what Belos was doing in the time between when he disappeared as this kid exploring the Isles and when he reappeared as Belos, the malicious emperor who wanted to conquer the world. So, if Belos is the kid Gwendolyn is talking about, he is older than an ordinary human. I think that is pretty clear. But that does not necessarily disprove the idea that he is a human. There have been a lot of ideas floating around in the fandom that he is artificially extending his life expectancy by preying on others vampire-like, just taking all the energy from those palismans. And I think that fits with the idea that Belos is the kid Gwendolyn was talking about in her little story. But age does not seem to be the only force from which Belos is seeking his ultimate liberation. In the trailer, there's this really interesting scene of the Golden Guard just cowering in dread and anxiety as this hideous beast creature explodes into a furious shadow. We don't see the creature, we only see the shadow, but there is every reason to believe that that creature is Belos. Now, what does this mean? You could take it as a mark against the idea that he's a human. You could say that this hideous creature is his true form. But based on the world of the show, I think it's more likely to assume that he has been cursed, like Ida and Lilith. That would line up with this world that we already know. And he tries to keep the curse in check, but it can explode out when he's not careful and transform him into this hideous monster. Considering the hypothesis that Belos is cursed and that he is trying to escape from that curse adds a different perspective to the con he pulls on Lilith when he tries to convince her that he will heal Ida if she does what he says. I can just imagine Belos alone, thinking in his study or wherever, does she really think I can heal Ida? Even if I wanted to, I can't even heal myself. But of course, even if we accept the idea that Belos is a human, and even if we accept the idea that he is cursed, and that he is artificially extending his lifespan, that does not clear up everything about his character. How old was he when he came to the Boiling Isles? What inspired him to become a conqueror? Was he a different person when he first arrived? And if so, what caused him to change into Emperor Belos? What caused him to acquire both the drive and the means to become such a conqueror? Belos is a Russian nesting doll of a character. At first he appears to be this bad guy with an interesting design, but not a lot of distinguishing characteristics, but the more you dig into him, the more interesting his character appears. The more mysteries one answers about Belos' character, the more other mysteries we now see. It seems as though we are going to discover the mysteries around Belos a lot sooner than I expected, considering the pace at which the show is moving. And of course, all this is very good, considering the truncated future of the show. It only has 3 more episodes after Season 2, so it had better make the best use of Season 2 possible. It had better reveal the mysteries about Belos sooner rather than later. If it doesn't, it risks really being crunched for time. It risks looking like it's rushing toward the end. I'm also just very interested to learn more about Belos, and by learn more about him, I don't just mean discover whether he is a human, though that is part of it. I mean his personality. I mean his desires and fears and anxieties. All the things that make people people. All the things that make individuals individuals. What propels him to do what he does? What does he feel anxious about? Are there close similarities between him and Luz? That's interesting. If the theory about him being the last human who came to the Boiling Isles are correct, that would set up a really clear and really interesting parallel between our hero and our villain. And I hope the show takes that opportunity to delve into this parallel. Perhaps light and dark are not as different as they initially appear. Perhaps the light has something to learn from its confrontation with the darkness in a Jungian sense. Now, I will admit I have absolutely no clear idea as to how and where they will take Belos' character. I thought I knew what they were going to do with Gwendolyn, Lilith and Ida's mom, and I was completely wrong about that. She was not a strict taskmaster, she was not a controlling mother. She was a decent mother who nonetheless let herself be tricked because she was desperate. So perhaps I will be wrong about Belos as well. Still, even if I am, I do hope they reveal more about Belos than has hitherto been revealed. Now, the show has certainly built up the enigma and mystery of Belos. They have certainly made him an intriguing villain, and that is quite an accomplishment. I don't want to take anything away from that, but nonetheless, an intriguing villain is not necessarily the same thing as a compelling villain. I don't just want to know simple shreds of Belos' backstory, little drips and drops of information here and there. I want to know Belos in the same way that I know some of the other characters the show has introduced to us. Now, I don't think the show is going to try and make Belos as compelling to us, the audience, as our main cast of King and Ida and Luce, nor do I think it necessarily needs to make Belos that compelling. But I'm just saying I want more about him. More information, yes, but also just more of a sense of who he is. I would be extremely disappointed if Belos turns out to be nothing more than a cackling baddie who shows the potential to be interesting and who has a philosophically compelling plan, but who remains a character we are never as invested in as we could be because the show doesn't really present his identity and his ideology and his general worldview and perspective on things, aside from simple evil villain speeches. I hope we will get a coherent sense of who Belos is, and I trust the Owl House team to treat that character with the level of nuance that it's given to a lot of its other characters. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching The Owl House. It's a compelling and intriguing show. I love how it lingers on these mysteries. It's definitely a show shrouded in mysteries in a way that we haven't really seen since Gravity Falls in terms of Western animated shows directed at an all-ages audience that are willing to entertain such mysteries and contemplate such mysteries. So I can't wait to see where they go from here. I'm sure it's going to be thrilling. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, I promise you that. Thank y'all again. Adios, comrades.